Hello, Trailblazers, and welcome to yet another edition of Entrepreneur Journey. And I am so excited to have Amy Riley with us here today. Amy, who I met recently through a mutual friend. I think we were on a webcast together, and she booked in on the podcast. I looked at a lot of her stuff that she was doing. I was like, wow, she's doing some amazing things, and I bet she has a great entrepreneur story to tell. So I'm glad that she is here. And what we like to do to start right off is to kind of get you some fun personal questions. So the first one of those is, would you rather be on a boat, in a helicopter, or a hot air balloon?
Well, first, I'd be open to any of those. And if you made me pick, I'd pick boat.
Nice. I think I would too. I've never been in a hot air balloon.
Me neither.
I think that would be the scariest of all of them.
I do too. Yeah. If you would say the one that you would least like to do, I would say hot air balloon, but I'd be open to trying it. And I have been in a helicopter before.
Yeah.
That's great fun.
And I've never seen like a headline that said hot air balloon crash, right? So it's probably not that scary.
It's true. I have not seen that headline.
So it's probably pretty safe.
Yeah.
The next question is, if you could have world-class talent, would you rather have it to be as a musician or an athlete?
This one is hard for me, Doug. I can't give you an answer on this one, but some background information. If you would have asked me when I was younger, if I had any talent, what would I want to be when I grow up? I would have said a lead singer in a band. I'll be on stage, be able to pick up different instruments. I mean, I just think those lead singers are cool. Today, I am an endurance athlete. I am not a world-class endurance athlete. So I would pick athlete today because I wish I had a little bit more speed or talent in that arena.
Nice. It's interesting that you say endurance athlete because my daughter runs track and field and she is a cross-country runner. So, and she's looking to go to college for that as well. So do you run marathons?
I do. I run marathons and I have run ultra marathons, distances longer.
So what qualifies as an ultra marathon?
I have heard anything longer than a marathon, and I've heard 50K or longer.
Wow. Okay, awesome. I do good at 5 miles on the treadmill.
Excellent. Whatever keeps us going, right? Whatever keeps us engaged in the fitness game.
I said treadmill, but I don't actually use the treadmill. I use the elliptical. So, and it has that little screen where you can look like you're running on a trail. So
there you go.
I'm good. My daughter is much faster than me. So, but it's all good. So let's dive into your actual entrepreneur journey. I'm interested in hearing the story of kind of like where you started at. And I mean, you've written a book or maybe several books at this point. And you've been featured on multiple places. I think I saw NBC and a lot of other places. So it's been quite the journey for you. So let's kind of start at the beginning. Give us the cliff notes along the way to where you are now.
Okay. I think a good place to start, Doug, because I didn't have the journey figured out at this point. It all makes sense now looking back, but at the time I didn't know. I graduated from college with an international business and French degree. And I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to be when I grew up. I was just trying to get myself into interesting positions, into potentially global companies. And I was working in the sales support area for a company, and they were doing a reorganization of their field organization, their sales and their service folks. And I was involved on the number crunching side. I was supposed to do all the BPI, buying power index numbers for different regions, but I would attend these large scale change meetings. Like, how are we going to shift all of this? And I kept wondering, how are people going to do this? How are we going to transfer the knowledge? Some of these folks are independent contractors. How much are we allowed to train them? How is this going to work? How are we going to set these folks up in the field for success? At the same time, that company had some internal training where they would allow non-facilitators, non-trainers to get involved in that facilitation. And I did, and I enjoyed it. So the woman who was in HR and she was leading this large scale change effort, she invited me out to lunch and she said to me, I've been watching you facilitate. I've been hearing the questions that you ask in our field reorganization meetings. I think you want my job. And I said, I think I might. And she let me know in confidence after the big reorg was done that she was going to move on. She said, I think you should put in for my job. So I did. And first I applied for graduate school to get my master's. And the program at that time was called Training and Development, and I got an emphasis in organization development. And I started that schooling. And then when her trainer position became open in HR, I applied for it, and the company gave me the opportunity, even though I didn't have that graduate degree. And that was a really great time, Doug, because I don't know, there were some courses in undergrad that were not very motivating to me because I didn't get a chance to apply it. But in graduate school, I had such fun because the company I was working for at the time, they didn't have a ton of money, but they were willing to try things. So I would literally learn things the night before at class and try things out the next day. So that was a fabulous opportunity for me.
That's awesome. I encounter that a lot of times in the digital marketing space, right? There's all kinds of new platforms that come out, and we have clients like when we just learning about it, say, let us try that, right? Let us try it and see and I love when a client is willing to take that risk of trying out something new that they haven't done before. So I totally get that. And I love that you were able to get that experience of being able to implement what you're learning on the way. So it's awesome.
It was great fun. And it probably it had me really capitalized on that graduate program education because I was really getting to apply and try.
So let's take the next step. So you have this great job, right? And so how do you transition from there to where you are as an entrepreneur now?
From there, I went on to lead the learning and development function and had the opportunity to work at a couple of different companies in very different industries, manufacturing, retail, professional services. And I found it fascinating that I would follow a similar process in assessing, designing, and developing, but the end product would look very different, depending on the culture and the leaders and where they were at. And I also found the last company in which I had an internal leadership role, my last internal job was at a manufacturing company. They manufactured truck and trailer suspensions and other components. And Doug, going into that job, I was really excited about the opportunity to establish their leadership development programs and to run the global learning efforts. But I thought this business is going to be really boring. Right.
As you were saying that, I was like, oh.
Truck and trailer suspensions, right? This is not sexy.
Yeah.
It is. It's way more interesting than someone looking from the outside in. I mean, to see what they were testing in the lab. I mean, I learned more about air ride suspensions than I might have ever wanted to. And it was more interesting than I thought. So I found this fascinating to learn about businesses and how they're so much more nuanced and complex than you know from the outside looking in, and they have their own language. Everybody has a million acronyms that you gotta learn. And I liked that. I mean, learning about businesses and also that challenge of customizing the learning solution to what the organization and the leaders and the learners are ready for intrigued me. And I had a great situation, a great boss at my last employer, but I decided I want to go out on my own.
Can I ask, is one of the reasons that you did that is because you wanted the variety of working with different types of companies?
Yes.
Nice.
Exactly. Yeah,
Nice.
I loved that variety. I thought it was really interesting to learn about different businesses and how they work on the inside. I'm kind of intrigued with like, what's the inside scoop, right? How does this really work?
Yeah.
Right? Like, what's the behind the scenes on that?
that was the case. We work with a lot of brick and mortars as an agency, and being able to work with different types of businesses and kind of look under the hood and see how their operation works is really fascinating. So I definitely know what you're saying there.
Agreed.
So now you're at a place where you're an entrepreneur, and who do you primarily, what type of businesses do you work with now?
Yeah. Well, so actually at this point in the story, I mean, I started my own business 23 years ago now.
Wow, nice.
So at first it was customized learning. And then pretty early on, Doug, I realized that I was really intrigued and passionate about leadership development. I want to develop leaders. So to answer your question, I work in a variety of industries because of my past experience and my last employer. I have had quite a bit of experience in manufacturing. And then recently has been quite a bit in professional services and tech organizations.
And you've written, you have a book called The Courage of a Leader. Is that right?
That is right.
Nice. So kind of, we'll dive into your expertise in a little bit, but kind of dive into what that book is all about.
Yeah, I was realizing as I was working with leaders in different ways and observing them, every time that I was impressed or inspired by a leader, they were demonstrating true personal courage. They were going out on a limb, or they were turning themselves into knots, trying to figure out how to deliver tough messages or support their team, have their team's back, or, dismantle something they had created. They had had a hand in creating in order to make sure that their company or their product line was going to be successful and meet future customer needs. And every time I was impressed, that word courage kept coming to me. And I thought, I want to tell these stories. There's so many leadership books and materials out there about, here are the behaviors you are supposed to demonstrate with your team. And I think it's much more about the work that we do inside of ourselves and our beliefs and our intentions. If we don't get the behaviors perfectly right, but team members can see our intentions and our sincerity, they're going to be on board. Right? They're going to forgive us for being human and not doing it, quote unquote, exactly right.
Yep.
So I wanted to share those stories and those messages about courage and the courage that it takes to be a great, inspiring, engaging leader that gets results.
Nice. Yeah. I've definitely seen that. Before I was an entrepreneur, I was also in the corporate world, and I had leaders that are ahead of me. I was a leader myself, but I saw leaders ahead of me, and I saw difference in leadership styles. And I saw how people gravitated to my leadership style because I just felt like it was more authentic and more, they could see I wasn't just follow these rules kind of guy,
Exactly, Doug. There's the courage of a leader, 4 pillars. And the first one is the courage to be authentically you.
Nice.
And I think we are most powerful as leaders, and people gravitated towards you because you embraced your style, you knew your strengths. When we're not trying to be something that we're not, I think we're our most powerful. And I work with leaders at all levels, but there's really something about working with emerging leaders. Right. And because they think, oh, I saw this great leader, I've got to be like her, I've got to be like him. And they're trying to emulate. And some of that might be part of their style, but some of it might not be. And to help them give themselves the permission to be themselves.
Yeah. I'm building a small team now with my company. And, we got more questions to go into, and I think we're going to cover some of them in these follow-up questions that I'm asking now, but I just feel like getting into it. And there's just some of this pressure on you as a leader to take care of these people that are under your wing. And then, so can you talk a little bit about that? I guess I'm not really sure what question I'm asking, but just kind of the weight of leadership, right? Of the weight of bringing people along with you.
Leadership is feeling like a heavy job.
Yeah.
these days, right? I feel it, speaking to leaders and working with leaders throughout my days like I do, especially with, how our work world and work setups and work environments have been completely turned on their heads in so many industries. The thing that employees want most from their leaders is attention. It's always been that. And I think now more than ever, just paying attention to people, letting them know I'm here to listen to what's going on with you professionally, personally, right? What do you need in your days? What's working for you? What's not working for you? What are your interests? I think it's important. I'm a big believer in strengths-based leadership. And of course, not like we've already talked about, leaders leaning into their strengths and their natural approach, but how can you enable each member on your team to do that as well? What are their strengths? How do you line up as much work as you can with their strengths and eliminate those places where they have to use their weaknesses or things that they're good at, but they don't enjoy? I call those weaknesses as well.
Yeah, I would imagine. So I'm going to ask these questions and hopefully we kind of haven't covered them already. I know you speak on a lot of things. Can you share with our audience how to create a compelling advantage with sustainable results producing cross-system collaboration? That's a mouthful. Are you willing to divulge a little bit on that?
Yeah. That's one of my most popular keynotes about, creating that cross-system collaboration. And I do think that creates a competitive advantages for organizations. So one of the key distinctions in that keynote is, who is your team? Who is your first team? And typically, when you ask someone that, let's say they're the leader of the marketing group, they'd say the marketing team. They don't say the team that provides XYZ product or service to the marketplace, right? They don't think about their cross-functional team. And if we can get the leaders of those functions and every member in those teams thinking, my team is everybody involved in, bringing this product or this service to market. There is an activity, Doug, that I've done in many leadership development programs. The activity that I use is actually the intellectual property of a business partner of mine called LIW. So I want to reference them. But it's an activity where we take all the leaders in the program and we break them up into 4 or 5 teams. And then we're giving each team hints to build a structure out of Legos. And then we're dumping a pile of Legos in the middle of the circle of all these teams. And we tell them, you have exactly the number of Legos that you need in order for each team to build their structure. And this activity is not over until all teams complete their structure. So we're telling them the name of the game is you don't win until every team's structure is built. And Doug, inevitably, they're rushing to grab the Legos and making sure they get more Legos than any other team. There's even a way that one of the teams can finish their structure according to their hints, right? It looks like they've met the criteria, but it won't enable the other teams to finish their structures. And so other teams are coming to them and saying, can we exchange you for these Legos? No, we've met our goal, right? We're done. And we're socialized to compete in this way, right? And we want to meet the objectives that are set out for our marketing team or our customer service team or our risk management team or whatever it is. And we don't relate to the organization or the division or the groups that are involved in bringing this service to market as our team. But if we thought that way, right, and collaborated inside of that group and shared resources in the most effective ways inside of that full team, how much more effective would we be?
A lot more effective.
Yeah. So those leaders saying, here's my team, this cross-functional group is my team. And another key concept in that keynote is every person thinking about inputs and outputs, right? Who am I getting inputs from right now? Who else needs to be involved here, right? Who would have a good perspective on this? Am I getting inputs from all of the individuals and stakeholders that I should? And then thinking about outputs. Who needs to know this, right? We kind of get into our transactional handoffs and not really thinking about, okay, in the bigger picture, let's lift my head up. Who needs to know this? Who should be involved? And we can think about that at a project level, or we could think about that at an individual task level.
Sharing information, right?
Yes. Yes. And often if there's not an immediate reason to share that information, like someone else doesn't need to take an action on it right away, we can forget or we cannot think about sharing that information. Yeah, but I've seen the difference when you really get team members focused on inputs and outputs, inputs and outputs for each task. How do I increase those on either side?
Nice. So I have another question, and it's something that I'm striving to do. And I know a lot of our audience is striving to do, and that's build a great team, right? So, and I know you know a great deal about that. So can you share your thoughts on team building?
Yeah, there's a lot we could say about team building, right? I'll try to boil it down, simplify it. Simple, but not easy, right? I mean, and it's not rocket science, but it just takes due diligence and focus. I'm going to say two things: connect and co-create, right? And leaders making sure that they connect with each team member, again, knowing their strengths, their passions, their interests, their preferences, and making sure that team members hear that from one another, right? So it's not just the leader, like I'm responsible for knowing everyone's strengths and communication preferences, but making sure every person on that team has the conversations with one another to understand. And some of that could be done in some group activities, right? Let's all share how we prefer to communicate in these kinds of situations. Let's share our favorite communication tools. Everybody share the top strengths you got to use at work last week. We can foster some of those conversations and empower team members to have those conversations with one another. Because from that connection comes understanding. From that understanding comes valuing the differences that others can bring, right? And then you can truly leverage that value.
Yeah. And I take that to heart, because I feel like that's something that I'm doing with my small team, is I will constantly ask you, okay, instead of just doling out responsibilities, right? Go figure it out. Here's your responsibilities. Go figure it out. Talk them. So here are your responsibilities. Let's talk about these responsibilities. Do you feel like you're fit for these responsibilities? What out of these responsibilities do you feel the most engaged in, et cetera, et cetera? I do have those conversations with my team, because I want them to be happy in the place that they are. And then if there is a responsibility they give them that doesn't quite fit, I try and find another place for that responsibility.
Yeah, that's great, Doug, because so many leaders shy away from that. Oh my gosh, what if there's something I need to ask my team to do that no one wants to do? Well, you know what? They're going to appreciate being asked the question. And it's nice to acknowledge, this is a task no one loves, right? Like, can we find someone who loves it, right? Or do we rotate it, right? Then everybody's involved in that co-creation. Right? What's the best way for us to collectively handle the work that needs to be done?
Or just even asking, are you willing to carry this load until we can find a place for that responsibility? Because I know that's not you're not where you're passionate, or that's not where you feel like your skills are best engaged. But if you will just carry it for the time being until we can find another place for it.
We're going to pursue some other ideas, right? To try to automate this or bring someone else onto the team. We recently added 2 virtual assistants to the Courage of a Leader team. Nice. And we hired 2 at the same time so that there could be this division of labor based on interests and strengths.
Nice. And if we could dive into that just a little bit with the VAs,
Yeah.
because a lot of my audience are either looking to hire a virtual assistant or have virtual assistants. And I feel like kind of what I just said happens a lot is here's your responsibilities, go get it done. And there's not much communication after that. And a lot of VAs will just diligently do that. And they don't really, there's not really much communication about how they feel about it. Right.
Yeah.
So,
Yes. Yes. I got the advice to hire 2 VAs at the same time, Doug, and I'm glad that I listened. Because when we're increasing the team at some point as an entrepreneur, that can be nerve-wracking, right? Do I have enough for this person to do? Am I ready to invest in this? Oh my goodness, really, I have the work to take on one more person. Do I want to hire 2 folks? Well, first of all, once you start outsourcing, you realize there's more that you can outsource. And when we're working in our sweet spot and having other people work in their sweet spot, then we get more efficient. There's more value provided, which leads to happier clients and more clients. We got to trust that process is going to come. And then you're investing resources in training and bringing these people up to speed. Now I actually think both of these VAs are going to work out and be with us for a long time. But if that turned out to not be the case, then I didn't put all my eggs in one basket, have the rest of my team spending time getting them up to speed. And now we've just lost all that time and effort and money. You train 2 people at the same time, and you increase your chances that you found the right person.
Very true. I will say that that was one of the best decisions I made way back is bringing on a VA. It was kind of like the first person that I hired. Well, no, I take that back. I actually hired, there's been a guy that's been with me since he was in high school. I've kind of been grooming him, and now he's like a year or 2 out of college. So kind of bringing him along since then, and he's been a great asset. But what the next best decision after bringing him on was bringing a VA on, because he was doing a lot of the mundane tasks and I needed him for higher level things. So I started to offload a lot of those mundane tasks that a VA would be happy to do to a VA. With that being said, can we dive in and kind of go in another direction? Because talking about VAs made me think of, and what you said is having standard operating procedures, right? Because once you train them, if you have that standing operating procedure, if it's a new thing that's with your business, and developing that standing operating procedure goes a long way into systems and processes, right?
Exactly right. So while you're training that person, if you don't already have the documentation, videotape the training program, right? Or have the new person put the process into documentation so that you have it going forward. Make sure that's being created along the way.
And just to go back to kind of a few steps back to what we're talking about before, if that's something that person doesn't enjoy and you do want to offload it to somebody else, it's a lot easier to offload it when it's already got a procedure behind it that's developed. So yeah, that's awesome. So one more question around your expertise, which we haven't got to yet. It's weird. We talked a little bit about it, but leadership, right?
Yeah.
So you say something in your content about leadership legacy. Can you just kind of talk about what you mean by leadership legacy?
Yeah, leadership legacy is a key concept for me. A leadership legacy is something that you want to create or you want to be known for. And it's something that you can start living into right away. So I talk to emerging leaders about leadership legacies. This is not something that we wait until the final chapter of our career, right? But what do you bring uniquely as a leader? It could be a new business model. It could be a set of improved processes. It could be a leadership trait that you bring and you foster in every interaction, relationship, and you bring it to every project. And I interviewed some successful, over 35 successful executives for the Courage of a Leader book, Doug. And as I was talking to them, they might not have called it a leadership legacy, right? But they were really clear about the purpose, the key value that their leadership brings. I took to writing it in the upper right-hand corner of my interview sheets, right? Fostering innovation, getting things done with global teams, leader as coach, right? They're always coaching and developing and looking for those moments and those ways to do that. Right? And I think the earlier that we declare our leadership legacy and start living into it fully, the more powerful that will be. And our leadership legacy lives in that place where our strengths and our interests overlap.
Nice. So it's kind of one of those things, like if you're an emerging leader, it's begin with the end in mind, right? Would you say that kind of like, where do you want your leadership to stand for? What do you want it to look like? Because then it's kind of like a mission, right? To leave that legacy. So
exactly. And then we look to our legacy for guidance, right? What would my leadership legacy want me to do next? What would my legacy want me to do in this situation? Which can have us acting bigger than our egos, bigger than any normal, natural human considerations that might come up. But, we have this bigger picture commitment.
Yeah, and it checks your integrity, your authenticity. I love this whole concept. Thank you so much for that, Amy. It's something that I'm going to definitely keep in the back of my mind, because as I'm growing this small team and going to hopefully build a larger team, and all that weight that comes with doing that, I definitely want to build a leadership legacy. So that is awesome. So you shared so much with us, and I'm sure a lot of our audience has learned a lot, not just about leadership, but so many things from your journey and from your expertise. Tell us where we can find that book. And I think you also have a podcast, so please mention your podcast and anything else that you would like to drive our audience to check out.
Oh, excellent. The Courage of a Leader book. It's called The Courage of a Leader, How to Inspire, Engage, and Get Extraordinary Results. You can find that on Amazon. And you can find the podcast and some resources. One resource that might be interesting to share is the Leadership Autobiography. That has leaders distinguishing their strengths, their story, and really zeroing in on what's my leadership legacy. So if you visit the Courage of a Leader website, which is courageofaleader.com, you'll see a link for the podcast. I've had a number of amazing leaders telling great stories on the podcast. And there's a link to resources where you'll find the Leadership Autobiography and other resources out there.
Nice. So question as well, let's talk about what kind of client you work with, so that if anybody fits that mold that is listening to this, can reach out to you, and kind of what you help people with exactly. So if any, and where they would go if they wanted to reach out to you to get leadership coaching.
Yeah, again, you can go to the website, courageofaleader.com, and learn more about the consulting and coaching that I do. Doug, I work with leaders who are ready to take it to the next level, right? Who are ready to do the work and know that it's not about robotically getting some behaviors right, but are really looking to bring their commitment, bring their legacy to the world, and create powerful teams that are focusing on the real results.
And I think anybody that has been watching this interview can tell just the kind of changes that she can help you instill in your leadership and with your team, that it can make a drastic change to your business. So thank you so much for everything that you shared today.
Yeah, my pleasure, Doug. Thanks for the questions.
You're very welcome. And any parting words for our audience?
Declare your leadership legacy.
Nice.
Some of you may already know what it is, right? Just put it into language, right? And start using that as your guidance system, right? And if you don't get it quite right, you'll figure that out very quickly, right? If you're fully living into that and asking yourself, what would my leadership legacy want me to do? You'll find out whether you have that exactly right.
Nice. So we're going to put all the links. I think there's pretty much just the one link because you can get all the resources at courageofaleader.com. And you can, if you're interested in leadership coaching, if you're interested in checking out the podcast or any of the other resources that she has available, that Amy has available on her website, please go check that out. And until next time, keep moving forward.